So I think those kind of contracts exist on ships, but you know, I mean, I got pretty lucky, and on this they treat us really well, and yeah. The other thing too is all of our meals and everything's, you know, our cabins looked up. The only thing you pay for is really internet and booze. So, and they can add up quick, believe it or not. But so anyway, yeah, I guess I just want to get into some. Question here. Yes.
For the Rock of Ages gig, it didn't look like had any charts there. So did you have to have the whole show memorized?
Yes, you're right. What's your name?
Rick.
Rick. This is Rick, everybody. Thanks, Rick. So yeah, the show is on charts. I'll show you in a second. Most, like every musical show that I've ever done, everything is on charts. So like the only reason why I got into doing shows like that is because I went to Humber College and I learned how to read a little bit. I mean, my reading is not great anymore. There was one time when it was pretty good because I was doing it every day, you know. But any musical show that you do is going to be on charts. So, but for Rock of Ages, like the band is on stage, we're part of the show. So it's an 80s band. Like, I mean, you know, 80s bands didn't read charts ever. I mean, it's just the way it was, right? So, but anyway, so I'll show you one of the charts. It's actually for the beginning of the show. Here it is. So this is actually the bit that you saw at the beginning. It says, yeah, Noise Paradise, good time. So I'll zoom in a bit. So yeah, you can see. That's the thing. So it says, can you guys see that okay? Heavy rock 4, 134, that's the tempo. And then, yeah, I got a little note here. It says downstage. So that's when I jump off the stage and get to the front and look like an idiot and everything. And so here's that little melody I have to play. It's the bit, the little solo bit from the David Lee Roth tune. You know,
kind of 46 band, please. 46
band. So it's all that. That's all written right there. So that's got to be there. I can't even play it now. I'm gonna have to work on it, obviously. And then it says wild finger tap shredding solo. So this is, it's you know.
They give you some little bit of room for creative things?
Well, yeah, but I mean, like this part here is actually cut on the ship, but it was a whole thing that we did for the thing downtown. I can't even do it now; it's been so long. So it was just, you know, I can't do it. It's just, but it's 16 bars of that. And the guy that did the show in New York is a guy named Joel Hoekstra, who's just a monster player. He's playing with Whitesnake now, and he's become a bit of a friend of mine. So. But the thing he did on the recording was just ridiculous. I had to do something else. But yeah, so that's the chart from the beginning of the show. So yeah, it's all charted out, but it has to be memorized. Like the whole show has to be memorized. So like the show is it's 2 1-hour acts basically with a 20-minute break. So it's about 2 hours of music. You know, like. You know, I think about it, like once I started reading stuff, charts and all that, I was thinking, wow, that's a lot of work. But when I used to play in the 80s, I mean, we just memorized the tunes. Like, we didn't read charts or anything. And I thought, man, if I did it back then, I could do it again. So, you know, you just do it. So, yeah. Does that answer your question, Rick?
Yes, great.
Yeah. So, yeah, that show is like, it's all got to be memorized. So, anyway, I just wanted to talk about some musical ideas. So I was saying, you know, I got into Humber College and started studying and stuff like that. I just realized one point that, you know, learning theory and stuff like that it's kind of important if you want to branch out and do other things. So I decided to go to Humber, and then I found out how to, you know, try to get in, and then I saw this sheet, and I'm like, oh, good God. Like, I'll pull it up here. So this was the sheet just to get in for the audition. So knowledge of note names on the fingerboard. So basically at the audition, the guy Ted Quinlan, who's a good friend of mine now, but he looks at your guitar. He's like, he points to. He's like, "What's that note?" And you got to answer. Okay, what's this? What's that? What's this? And you got to basically say what it is. And then you say, "Okay, play an E flat on the second string, or play it like a D on the fourth, or like a G on the fifth string." So and you got to be, you got to get to it really fast because you got to know your fretboard. 2-octave major scales, so that's a major scale if you don't know what it is. Do, re, mi, basically. Harmonic minor scale, so. If any of you heard of Ingrid Malmsteen, he plays that a lot. Melodic minor scale is basically a harmonic minor scale with a raised 6th and 7th. The other way you can look at it is a major scale with a lowered 3rd. So, that's that. Major, minor, augmented, diminished, or triad arpeggios. So, it's just the notes of the chord, basically. And, so he'll ask you to play all that kind of stuff. And then you've got these progressions, 1, 6, 2, 5. So it's just the numbering system for knowing the chords of a scale and all that kind of thing. Basic jazz blues, it's just like everybody's heard of the blues, but jazz blues has more chords in it. So, with the addition of the 1, 4, 5 chord for blues, you got, something called the 2, 5 in there. It's just a lot more chords. Chord progressions to jazz tunes of medium difficulty. So he has tons of standards and stuff. Something that I had to get at Humber College is something like this. It's called a real book. So it's a whole book of all standard jazz tunes. It's kind of endless. Like it's lots of tunes. So this is obviously good for developing your reading and there's just literally hundreds of tunes in here that you would jam with your friends and students and stuff like that. So, the teacher would, I remember Ted opening up a page to like an easy tune like this or whatever, and he'd say, okay, play that, and you'd have to sight read it on the spot. So, obviously you do better in some things than other things, and reading was not my strength. So, anyway, I got in. And worked my butt off for 3 years to try to keep my head above water, but it was worthwhile. So it's a really good experience to do. So, in terms of that, is this pretty dry so far or what? How are you guys making out? Thanks, man. Question?
Question. Which college would you recommend, if you want to pursue music?
So the one I went to is called Humber College. It's in Etobicoke. It's at Lakeshore and it's around Brown's Line. So it's probably one of the better ones in the country. But for music, there's also U of T. U of T has a really good jazz program, and they have some classical stuff too. York has a really good music program. I'd say those three would be Humber, York, and University of Toronto. For actors and singers and dancing, stuff like that, there's the place would be, what's it called in Oakville? It's called Sheridan College. So there's a whole theater program in Sheridan College. So I work with a lot of people coming out of Sheridan College, a lot of younger kids. And then there's a place in Toronto called Randolph School for the Arts, I think. So that's another good one. So if you have younger kids who want to get into the theatrics of acting and singing and dancing, those would be the ones to check out. Would be Sheridan, but more music related, more music specialty, be definitely Humber and York and University of Toronto. Montreal has a good music program at McGill. They've got another really good program. I think in Halifax is a St. Francis Xavier University has a good music program if you know anybody out east, and I'm not sure westbound. I think Edmonton has somewhere in Edmonton has a good music program as well. I have a buddy I think that went out there. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah, so in the States there's tons of them. I mean, you could go to GIT in LA, you can go to Berkeley and Boston, but it'll cost you $30,000 a year for tuition. So good luck with that. I mean, I have a friend that went.
57,000 a year.
Sorry, how much is it?
57.
57,000 US now, right? Too?
Well, Canadian.
Canadian. Wow, like that's just crazy,
4
right?
years
Who
is 273,000.
who can afford that? Like, that's crazy, right? Wow, that's just insane. Like, I mean, that would take you like your lifetime to pay that off, right? You'd need some pretty good gigs to get your head above water there. But yeah, so I mean, we have some great stuff here in Canada. I mean, Humber is a great school, and you know, you're gonna find the best musicians in the world there. And I was lucky enough to study with a lot of them. So, but just getting back to the theory, I don't want to bore you too much with the theory stuff, but you know, it's something that the teachers would tell us all the time would be to play stuff in all 12 keys. So if you guys know basic musical theory, there, like on a guitar neck, if I take this low string, you know, and if I go all the way up, there's basically 12 frets. So there's a different note on each fret. These are all frets. So there's a scale that comes off of every one of those notes. So we have basically 12 keys. And a way to explain it is this thing called the cycle of fifths. So it just looks like a clock, you can see. So if you start here at the top, we've got the key of C, and it has no sharps or flats. So if you look at a piano keyboard, it's all the white keys. So if you see a piano keyboard, the key of C is just all the white keys. If you play Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do on the piano, it would be all the white keys. When you start doing a scale, which is basically a pattern, so if you follow that pattern, if you start on a different note, that's how you get sharps from. So if I go from G, we end up with an F sharp. So that's one sharp. And if you look at the cycle here, you can see to the right here, G, it says 1. So all of the sharp keys, I just drew this yesterday, all of the sharp keys are on the right side here. So you got one sharp, and then if you keep going 5 notes higher, you get to the next one, which is D, so that D has 2 sharps. Then if you go even more, you get to A, which has 3 sharps, you know. So if you go around the cycle clockwise, you go in fifths, and if you go around counterclockwise, you go in fourths. So when you go this side, you go flats. So if you start on F, you end up with a B flat. So anyway, but the whole point is, like, if you're playing a lot with a lot of different people, you got to know different keys, because you know, you might work with one guy and he's like, oh, I do that song in E, you know, like the real key or whatever. But then you work with another guy's like, oh, I can't sing that high, man. You got to take it down to C, right? So what's that? E flat, yeah, even E flat, you know. So I like Don't Stop Believing, which is in the show. I played like in at least 6 different keys, you know.
You can't conveniently take down unless you detune or get into a 7th string. Like, you actually play people wanting it in E flat and D.
Yeah, you got to play it in different keys, man. To show up at a gig, hey man, can we do Don't Stop Believing? Yeah, I can't do it in E though. Can you do it in D? Or well, you know, one guy's, can you do it in C? Because I can even D's too. So you gotta play it in different keys. One guy I played with, I do it in A. So I mean, you gotta be able to be versatile, because not everybody can sing at the same range. You know, I mean, everybody has a different voice, and you know, you can't force somebody to sing something that's too high for them. We got a question in the back. It's my good friend Jeff at the back. Say hi to Jeff, everyone.
How often do you put a capo into that, though?
Sometimes you can get away with it, you know. I mean, so like a key like E flat or whatever, be like, gee, I don't know, I'll just do it at the first fret and I'll play it in D or something, and then it ends up being E flat just to make it easier. A lot of times too, on some of these shows, you want it to be like an open string sound. Sometimes there's no way to play things like with a bar chord or whatever to get it to sound right, because just you need the sort of sound of the open strings for it to be right and to get the right voicings and everything like that. So sometimes, yeah, you can get away with a capo, but like a lot of times when it's got to be really quick and you're in a bar situation where everybody's going, okay, come on, like we gotta go right. You don't have time to put a capo on and tune, and you know, so sometimes you get away with it. That's a good question. Does that answer your question?
Definitely.
Yeah, right on. So yeah, you got to be able to play in a lot of different keys, you know. And I've been on like jazz gigs where somebody's like, "Yeah, I don't do that in G. Can you do it in D flat?" And it's tough, you know. And they'll give you the chart in G, and you got to transpose 50 chords like on the fly. Just look at, and you know, it's like. Like a lot of chords, and you got to transpose, which means the idea of taking a song or a chord or whatever and put it to another key. So, you know, it gets pretty. You got to know your theory and stuff like that. Yeah, question.
So yeah, so do you think that would be a requirement for an audition to a college or something? Would they
Like
expect-
transposing on the fly? Probably not.
like if they say play it in this key or whatever.
I didn't have to do it. Because that's a pretty hard thing to do. So I think they're just, when you're auditioning for like Humber or something like that, they're gonna stick to the sheet. They're not gonna throw any surprises at you. I mean, you know, it says on the sheet they got to be prepared, and you know, there's the last thing on there was something called the chord melody, and I remember I worked on like this thing for like months. There's this thing called Stella by Starlight. So you have to basically play the melody and the chords and everything. So, you know, I worked, it took me months to get that kind of thing. So, you know, it's just like to get into the school, they tell you everything that you kind of need to do. They don't tend to throw surprises at you. Once you get into the school, that's different, you know, they'll start throwing more and more stuff at you. But, you know, you're always going to be on a gig where it's going to be like, what? I didn't learn it in that key, you know, and you gotta just think of something fast, you know. So does that answer your question? Yeah. So how am I doing? Is this boring you, or do you want me to move along with the next kind of thing, or how's that? Yeah, good. So yeah, cycle of fifths, scales, triads, seventh chords. Just, you know, there's a lot of you learn a lot of different scales when you're at music school, obviously based off of major scales and stuff like that. A lot of people ask me questions about something called modes, which has to do with the major scale and stuff like that. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about it. People tend to think of them as just being something that, like a scale that you stop and start on one note or whatever. Like some people call this Ionian mode, and then there's Dorian mode. And then Phrygian and stuff like that. It's not so much the note that the scale starts and stops on, as much as how the notes that you're playing refer to the chord itself. So if I play like a chord like this, something called a major 7, you know, my first lesson with this fellow John Pelosi told me, like, he told me something that like a light bulb went off in my head. He says, you know, people like just try to play scales and stuff like that. He says, you got to think of the chord that you're playing on. And if you play the notes of that chord, it's always going to sound good. Doesn't matter what song you're playing. So if I play like a chord like this, so it's made up of 4 notes. So if I play that, that's a chord tone. So these are all chord tones. As long as you're playing those notes of the chord, it's going to sound good. If I play it, if I play this chord, it's a slightly different chord. So as long as I play chord tones, it's going to sound like that chord. So he told me the idea of outlining the chords. So does that make sense to everybody? So